early 1990s, did four friends contact the dead in a 17th century English farmhouse? For 5 years, the Scole Experiment's chilling seances produced cryptic spirit messages and a verified 1920s newspaper photo on tamper-proof film, an archival image untouched by humans, conjured to show spirits could manifest physical evidence. Is this proof of two-way communication with the dead, or just a masterful hoax? This spine-chilling mystery will grip you. So what will we find on our remote view? Let's meet the people at the heart of this mystery. The Scole Experiment was led by two married couples, Robin and Sandra Foy, the owners of the farmhouse, and Diana and Alan Bennett, who claimed to be mediums with the ability to channel spirits. Robin Foy was a seasoned spiritualist and had a history of leading seances, some of which raised eyebrows among skeptics. The Bennetts, on the other hand, claimed direct line to the dead, insisting they could summon spirits to interact with the living. And these sessions weren't just a private affair. By 1995, the experiment's bizarre claims caught the attention of the Society for Psychical Research, or SPR, a respected organization known for investigating paranormal phenomena. 3 prominent SPR members, former President Arthur Ellison, psychology professor David Fontana, and researcher Monty Keene, joined the group. Over 3 years, they attended more than 20 sittings, determined to uncover the truth. These weren't amateurs. They were seasoned investigators armed with academic rigor and a reputation for skepticism. Yet, what they witnessed would leave them questioning everything they knew. Dubbed the Scole Hole, all these seances took place in the basement of the farmhouse. And what happened in the Scole Hole was nothing short of astonishing. Participants described lights appearing out of nowhere, tiny pinpricks of glowing spheres that danced around the room, responding to commands. Touch the crystal, they'd say, and the lights would strike a crystal on the table, making it glow. Objects materialized from thin air, coins, jewelry, even a pristine 1944 newspaper, later verified by experts as authentic. Furniture moved on its own. Invisible hands touched the sitters, and some claimed to feel water sprinkle on them in the pitch-black room. The most jaw-dropping claim: images and messages appeared on an undeveloped film, sealed inside locked boxes or cameras that were never opened. Faces, abstract shapes, even writing, allegedly from the spirit world. And then there were the sounds, crackling noises, taps, bells ringing, and musical instruments played by unseen forces. The group claimed they were communicating with a team of non-human intelligence, spirits who used the portal to cross dimensions. But as the phenomena grew stranger, so did the questions. Was this proof? Or was this proof of the afterlife? Was it something earthly? Not everyone was convinced. Critics tore into the Scole Experiment, pointing out glaring flaws in its mythology. For starters, the seances took place in a private home, not a controlled lab. The mediums set their own rules, insisting on total darkness and wearing luminous wristbands to prove they weren't moving. But skeptics noted that mediums have long been known to slip restraints. which Robin Foy himself had led. The spirits, channeled through the mediums, allegedly demanded these conditions, raising suspicions. Why would spirits fear infrared cameras, which the mediums banned, claiming they'd harm the entities? Without visual recordings, the phenomena like the moving objects and lights were only documented in audio transcripts, making them highly subjective. Critics argue the group lacked scientific rigor. No peer-reviewed studies were published, and many phenomena like the levitating tables could be replicated by magicians using hidden wires or some magnets. Some pointed to the Foy's ties to the spiritualist church, suggesting a bias towards promoting afterlife beliefs. Was this genuine attempt at science or a well-orchestrated trick? Despite criticism, the SPR investigators, Arthur Ellison, David Fontana, and Monty Keene, weren't so quick to dismiss the Scole experiment. After 3 years and over 20 sessions, they published an extensive report. Their findings? They couldn't detect any direct evidence of fraud or deception. They noted evidence favoring the hypothesis of intelligent forces at play, forces they couldn't explain. The lights, the apports, the film images, they were baffled. But their conclusions came with a caveat. They admitted the evidence for survival after death was inconclusive. The lack of strict controls, the medium's influence over the sessions, and the inability to rule out trickery left them hesitant to fully endorse the findings. They were intrigued and even shaken, but not completely convinced. The Scole experiment, they said, raised more questions than answers, and that ambiguity only deepened the mystery. While the SPR investigators were left grappling with more questions than answers, unable to fully explain the phenomena they witnessed, the man at the heart of the Scole experiment had no such doubts. Robin Foy, the group's leader and fervent believer in the afterlife, claimed the sessions were guided by forces far beyond our understanding. Forces that not only communicated with the living, but dictated how the experiments should unfold. In a rare video, Foy shares chilling evidence of transdimensional communication, including a man speaking with his deceased uncle in vivid detail, and a message from none other than Thomas Edison. Yep, that's right, Thomas Edison, who in life spent many years trying to develop a communication device between the living and the dead. And from the other side, he provided blueprints on undeveloped film for a device to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. Let's hear what Foy has to say.
Quite a lot there. The fourth one that we got was that through a cassette tape recorder that we used to play the music on, the spirit team were able eventually to work a different type of phenomena with that, so that they were actually able to speak to us through the amplifier of the cassette tape recorder. So we could have a two-way conversation through the amplifier of the cassette tape recorder with spirit people. And I always remember when we were giving these seminars to our members of the Noah's Ark Society and various others at Scole, was that there was one guy there who'd lost his uncle about 6 months previously. And through this tape recorder, his uncle spoke to him for a good 5 minutes, and he immediately recognized his uncle's voice, and that was it, so they carried on a very evidential conversation. And the final way that we got to speak with spirit basically was after we had had a blueprint of a little device which we knew as the TDC, transdimensional communicating device, that had been, the blueprint was put on an unopened film during one of our sessions by Thomas Edison. Actually placed this blueprint on an unopened film psychically, and asked us to sort of produce this device, which was done. It took a long time, several months, almost a year, to really get it going properly. But this little device was plugged again into the amplifier of a cassette tape recorder, and eventually we were able to get two-way conversation between the spirit world and ourselves. But because it was known as the transdimensional communicator, we were also able to get two-way conversation between ourselves and ETs. And that had been the intention right from the very beginning. The very first person to speak to us through that device, and his conversation lasted 15 minutes, was Thomas Edison himself.
Robin Foy's account of transdimensional communication are nothing short of astounding, painting a picture of a world where the dead speak with startling clarity. But as we step back into the shadows of the Scole Hole, a lingering question haunts us. Is this undeniable proof of the afterlife, or fakery at its finest? Let's remote view it. But first, before we get into our remote view, let's elevate your journey, personal and cosmic. Meet your must-have companion, the Energy Healing Map at mdhmap.com. Perfect for beginners and pros, it's your guide to clearing trapped emotional energies like ancestral or past life baggage, aligning your vibration with your goals. Imagine releasing old vibes to unlock new skills like remote viewing. With a clear energy field, you'll tap into the unseen. mdhmap.com helps you heal, grow, and explore your universe. Grab your energy healing map today, clear the past energies, and align your vibe, and see what's out there. Visit mdhmap.com now. So, what did we discover on our remote view? Now remember, you are powerful and you can remote view this too. Maybe you don't have years of training, but that's okay, because the subconscious mind will not lie to you. Have you ever had the feeling, I wish I had listened to that gut instinct, and you ignored it and things didn't go well? In fact, you talked yourself out of it. That's the difference between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Now, I'm not saying don't use logic. Always use your logic, but weigh it against what your gut feeling is telling you. And as we go through the story on the remote view, feel your body. Does it feel light or does it feel tight? If it feels light, it means what I'm saying is resonating with you. If it feels tight, leave a comment. I want to know what's going on. Remember, when the government was in psychic spying, and they probably still are, but back in the day when you had Joseph McMoneagle and Russell Targ and all the rest of those, Ingo Swann, those pioneers in psychic spying, it took a team of people to figure out. So I might get a piece, you might get a piece, and together we can all sort of figure it out. The important thing is to take away from this is that you have the power to remote view. Nobody has any more gifts than anybody else. That is a myth. Some people are more adept at playing the piano. It comes more naturally, while others have to practice more. But they still have the ability to play the piano. So just remember that going into this remote view. Now, what did I pick up along with my team? Seems to be the consensus of what we are picking up. Let's ask the first question. Was the Scole experiment involved in deception, intentional or unintentional? That's a great question, because it's a combination of both. It does feel that the majority of the people involved, it's not intentional. They got what they got, and they are coming from a place of service to others, that they are true in what they are observing, what they're feeling, and what they're getting. Now, let me explain, but first, allow me to give a caveat. The people involved in this experiment are still alive, and therefore, I don't want to make any judgments that might prove them necessarily wrong. So, this is why it's important that you take my information as entertainment purposes only and do your own due diligence. Feel it out, ask the question yourself, and then maybe do your own research and come to your own conclusion. I'm just giving you our perspective. And now, having said that, I do feel that it is a mix. So let me ask you the question. When I say, how does it feel to you? Was the Scole experiment involved in deception or intentional or unintentional? For us, we get the feeling it's a combination of both. So it does feel that there is a rogue element within the group that is not above proving a point, even if they have to use the means of deception to do that. And the case in point we are observing is the film that had Thomas Edison's blueprint. We all have the consensus that was fraud. And it is interesting that they would not allow infrared cameras in. I don't believe anybody in the spirit world is sensitive to infrared. So when somebody tells you that and you got that gut punch, that is like they're not being honest with me. That feels like it's on the edge of deception. So when they're not allowing it to be in a controlled setting like a lab, like coming to the university where we can control the environment and really test what's going on, and that was turned down. Turning down infrared to see what's going on in the pitch black, that is a red flag. It's a red flag. I mean, we all want truth. And I think all of you watching this, we all want to know that we can have communication with the spirit world. Me especially, because both my parents are on the other side. And I would love to have nothing more than a two-way conversation with them. That is in a visceral sense. Like I can hear their voice like coming over a phone or a radio. I think that would be cool. And I do know that there is a soul phone that's actually in development. And that was actually advertised several years ago on Coast to Coast Radio with George Norrie. So look into that one. All right, now we got squirrel moment going on. Let's go back to this group. I do feel that there is one. I'm not going to name names. I feel I know who it is, but I could be wrong. I'm not wrong often, but I can be wrong. So you test it out. Of the four people, who feels the person that is causing deception or you feel is deceiving or not fully truthful? However you want to phrase that. So it feels like the film is a hoax. And it would have been nice if they would have allowed the group, the investigators, to seal it in an envelope. Instead, it was placed in a box that could be tampered with. So I have to actually side with the scientist on this one, that even though they're saying the film is not tampered with, I am not convinced, and nor is my team convinced, that it wasn't tampered with. We are getting a sense it was tampered with. I do feel that Diana, the psychic medium, has a gift, but I don't feel she's as strong as you would find with maybe Teresa Caputo, John Edwards, Matt Frazier. I'm not seeing her having that level of skill, so it can be open to interpretation to what she's getting. And when you are tuned in to the other realm, there can be other entities coming in and pretending to be the person you hope or want to connect with. So this is why, especially people in religion saying, you got to be careful with that. Don't mess with that. That can be demonic and what have you. I am not of that mindset, but that's where that information comes from. I'm of the mindset, if you set the proper intention, and put the proper protections around you to allow only positive energies in, you can access the Akashic records. And accessing the Akashic records through the subconscious mind, just as Dolores Cannon talks about for a blue million years that we all know about as QHHT practitioners, you can actually set the attention without going into hypnosis through attention intention. And there is a process to do it. So if you want to know how to do it, go to the coaching site on sallyknott.com and set up an appointment. I'll walk you through it. So we don't need to get in the weeds of that here. But you can access the Akashic records. It's not necessary to connect with a certain spirit that may or may not be the person you are expecting to connect with, because there are trickster energies out there that will enjoy deceiving you. I believe that. Dolores believed that. I see it when I work with people every day in energy healing. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not connecting with the person you want to. You can. And there is a process that is proper you can take to do that. And that's amazing. We have soul to soul contacts all the time doing our lighter hypnosis sessions. Those are amazing. And we have great fun with that. So also check that out. Now, was it intentional or unintentional? I feel like it was both. My team feels it was both. It does feel that the film was deceptive. I'll leave it there. Next question we have is, did the Scole Experiment capture spirit communication? It did. In our humble opinion, it did capture communication, but maybe not with a spirit. What is actually coming in was a bit shocking for all of us. And, I'm like, I don't believe I was expecting I was going to get Thomas Edison, because Robin Foy is so convinced that he connected with Thomas Edison. So because the authenticity of this man and his belief where he was tapped in, it felt to me, and this is why you got to be careful when you do this stuff, and why language is key, because you can ask a question thinking one thing, get an answer, and you think it's this, but you're putting the two together and it's not exactly accurate. All right, so that's a coaching session in and of itself. But it felt like he really believed. And here's the thing, when Diana Bennett tuned in, I feel she too believed that she was talking with Thomas Edison. And I feel like they sort of jumped to the conclusion that's who it was. But when we tuned into it, this is where it gets crazy. Oh, I love this stuff. It felt like it was interdimensional alien. So I feel alien in nature. It does feel like an off-worlder, advanced being trying to make soft contact. So placing them in a position where they can have a two-way conversation. And because they are advanced beings, they have almost instantaneous access to the Akashic records. So that's going to be key in all this, because if this being has access with ease to the Akashic records, they can tune in to the long deceased uncle and have complete communication with the nephew as if they were that person, the uncle that died. Again, I wanted badly for this person to connect with his deceased uncle, but again, it feels like it was this being. And in some regard, it almost feels like this is how it comes across. It's almost like this advanced being tuned into the uncle, and it feels like the uncle, either through the Akashic records or through the soul itself, and I'm not clear on it, so you tune in and figure it out. Remember, you don't have to be advanced trained, just feel your gut. It feels like it's communicating with the uncle, but it's like going through a chain, if you will. It's like going through a chain. So the entity that is in communication is not, in my humble opinion, or my team's, it wasn't actual Thomas Edison, and it wasn't the uncle. It was this interdimensional advanced alien being who is in service to others. It's not a scary being. It feels like it's meant for soft contact, and it had access to information that would have been brought forward by the uncle and by Thomas Edison. Now, the question I have, and what I'm not completely clear on, is, was this being going to the Akashic records and then going to the soul, or going to the soul of that person? But it feels like it's connecting to the Akashic records. And the Akashic records has all information of every thought, anywhere, all time, interdimensionally. It's got it all. It's just all recorded. Sorry about hitting that microphone. It probably goes thump. Anyway, so that's what we're getting. It was this being. And if you listen to that whole video, by the way, the link for that will be in the description box. So you can watch the whole video and draw your own conclusion. But Robin was convinced that they were talking to Little Blue, so this advanced being. But in my humble opinion, it wasn't the two souls and this Little Blue, or I think is what he called him, the alien. It was the entire time the alien, and through the process, the alien came forward. So it's when you're going through a process of soft disclosure, you don't want to scare anyone or panic anyone, although there were some people who were scared and left. But that's why I feel it was authentic. Now, it is interesting that they could not really reduplicate this whole thing again. And I do believe they either have tried or will try again. But the reason they're not having the level of success that they had initially is because there was a disconnect. It's almost like the alien said, okay, I've done my bit. I've given you information. I've studied this. Now let's see, it planted the seed. Let's see where this goes. And then it disconnects. So there is a disconnection in that communication, which, and I do feel that they set up this recorder and this device, but I feel like it was more for the people doing the experiment. It feels like that alien could have come forward no matter what, because of its own advanced technologies and ability to manipulate its environment, which is where we're all headed these days. So that's cool. And especially if you're interested in this contact, you already know you're a superhuman. You may not believe it fully, but you know it internally. So that's why I always say ignite the superhuman in you, because you got it. So yeah, I feel like it's all about self-disclosure and planting the seeds and getting us prepared as a species. Look, this group out there that's making soft contact, coming in ways that we can understand without giving us panic in a transition period, has to do it in such a way that they don't want to invite a warring negative population out to the universe. That helps no one. So if you're in service to self, you're not invited. You're not invited. If you're going to be in service to self, you're all about you, and they want no part of that. We have to evolve as a species to be in service to others. If you're in service to self, this is the dimension of duality, and there are lessons for all of us. Maybe you're younger and you're in service to self, And through evolving and maturing and becoming aware of how you impact others, even by a simple smile to a stranger on the street and lifting that person up for just a second, when you become aware that you have the power to make somebody feel better, and that how you move through your life experience impacts others, and you become aware that you need to impact people in a positive way, then that's the evolution that the species is going to. And I feel like we will always evolve. We will begin to evolve out of it. We're definitely in that transition period. Dolores Cannon calls it the new earth, but it is just moving to a higher frequency. And we can see the lower frequencies out there, but whether or not you decide to engage in that is up to you. I just want to scroll a moment on you, so let me circle back. This is all what it's about. And so I do feel the Scole Experiment was successful in being a target for soft disclosure. All right. Did the Scole Experiment capture communication from an interdimensional alien? Yeah, we already talked about that, definitely. And has the Scole Experiment been replicated? Not successfully, and not by scientists working in the lab, as far as I can tell. Now, for this to work, we do need to put it in a lab environment. If you look at Teresa Caputo, she went into the lab and she had sensors placed over her head, and they did measure with scientific tools that there is a frequency change in her brain. So there is something phenomenal taking place. Here's the thing. We all have that ability to develop it, but she just has a stronger propensity for it. Now, why is that Teresa Caputo and John Edwards and the rest of them, those really strong psychic mediums, in my humble opinion, doing this work as a QHHT practitioner, as an energy healer, and working with people for over a decade, there does seem to be something to the DNA being an antenna. Greg Braden talks about this. There are other scientists that talk about the, quote, junk DNA acts more like an antenna. So their DNA strands 3, 4, and 5 are vibrating at a higher frequency than, say, mine is or yours are. But how do you increase the vibration of that antenna so you can go from the AM dial to the FM dial and get those higher frequencies and have the two-way communication? Well, first of all, you got to clear away any trapped emotional energies that you have. You've got to, any ancestral energy that you've brought forward. Back in the day, they called them miasms, but now they call it gene expression. You get that all cleared away. And then once you can clear away some of your old programming that puts you in a belief of doubt of yourself, get that cleared away, then you have the ability to tune in a whole lot quicker, a whole lot easier, and you will get massive downloads. And I do this every day. So if you want to learn how to do it, reach out to me. Or I've got my map, MDH map. Go to it. It'll walk you through it. $12 a month. What do you got to lose? Try it out. You can cancel anytime. But that will also, you can tune into yourself and start clearing yourself, healing yourself energetically. You can do it for yourself. You can do it for loved ones. So anyway, with that, we're going to wrap it up. Now, we are going to be looking into Charles Lindbergh. Here's the thing with Charles Lindbergh. He apparently wasn't the nice guy everybody thought he was. And in fact, if people find out what a dirty dog he probably was, if the rumors are true, and that's why we're going to remote view it, all the accolades that he had as being this great hero probably should be muted. I mean, yeah, you flew across the Atlantic when you did, and that was awesome. You proved a point, yay for you, but that does not excuse bad behavior. So the question I have is, because the internet's rife with the clickbait, was this man a true hero, or was he a dirty bird? Was he both? Isn't it interesting how life is always a little bit more complicated? But we're going to remote view that in our next video. If you have a topic you want us to remote view so you can engage in and start doing this with us, please leave a comment and we'll take a look at it. So for that, let's let it go for now. We'll see you in the next remote video. Remember, you can do it too. Let's build a team. Chat soon.